They say power whispers while weakness shouts. But what happens when a billionaire CEO, a black man who built the technology running America's airports, is dragged off a plane like a criminal one phone call? That's all it took. 2 words, Protocol Raven. And within 48 hours, an entire airline empire crumbled. This is the story of Nathaniel Cole, the genius they underestimated, and the revolution that began with a single act of discrimination. Stay until the end, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The air inside Washington National Airport smelled like burnt coffee and impatience. Nathaniel Cole stood in the first-class boarding line, his leather briefcase at his feet, his charcoal suit pressed to perfection. He wasn't a man who needed to announce himself. His presence did that 6'2" salt-and-pepper beard trimmed close eyes that had stared down boardrooms and billion-dollar deals without flinching. But today, someone was staring back. Sandra McKee's eyes narrowed the moment she saw him. She was a veteran gate agent, 23 years with Regalis Airways, and she wore her authority like armor. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun, her smile plastic and practiced. She'd seen thousands of passengers, sorted them into mental categories before they even reached her podium. And Nathaniel Cole to her didn't fit. "Boarding pass," she said, not looking up from her screen. Nathaniel handed it over without a word. He'd learned long ago that silence was sometimes the loudest response. Sandra's fingers froze on the keyboard. Her eyes flicked from the screen to his face, then back again. "This says first class." "That's correct." "Sir, are you sure this is your ticket?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Around them, other passengers shifted uncomfortably. A businessman in line behind Nathaniel cleared his throat. A mother pulled her daughter closer. Nathaniel's voice remained level, almost gentle. "I'm certain." Sandra's jaw tightened. She picked up the phone beside her computer, never breaking eye contact. "Security to Gate 12. We have a situation." "A situation?" Nathaniel's eyebrows raised slightly. "I presented a valid boarding pass for a seat I purchased." "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside." "On what grounds?" "There's been an error with your ticket." "No," Nathaniel said quietly. "There hasn't." The terminal had gone quiet. 57 people watched in silence. Nathaniel had counted them a habit from his early days as a programmer, when numbers felt safer than people. 57 witnesses, and not one spoke up. 2 security guards appeared, their hands resting on their belts. The younger one, maybe 25, looked uncomfortable. The older one, a thick-necked man with a shaved head, looked eager. "This gentleman needs to be escorted from the gate," Sandra announced, her voice carrying across the terminal. "He's refusing to cooperate." "Ma'am," the younger guard said, glancing at Nathaniel's boarding pass, "his ticket appears valid." "I don't need you to tell me how to do my job, Victor," Sandra snapped. "This man is attempting to board with fraudulent credentials." Nathaniel felt the familiar weight settle in his chest. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something older, something he'd carried since he was 7 years old, and a teacher had accused him of cheating because his test scores were impossibly high for someone like him. Someone like him. "Victor, is it?" Nathaniel turned to the younger guard. "Check my ID against the ticket. My name is Nathaniel Cole. I purchased this first-class seat 6 days ago. Transaction confirmation is on my phone, which I'm happy to show you." Victor reached for the documents, but the older guard, whose name tag read Brennan, stepped forward. "Sir, you need to come with us, now." "Or what?" The question was soft, almost conversational, but it stopped Brennan cold. "Don't make this difficult," Brennan said, his hand moving to his radio. From somewhere in the crowd, a voice, young, trembling. "That's Nathaniel Cole." Heads turned. A young black man in his early 20s, wearing an intern badge for Cole Dynamics, stood with his phone out, his face pale with recognition. Oh my God, that's Nathaniel Cole," the intern Jamal said, again louder this time. "He owns Cole Dynamics. His AI systems they run this airport." The silence that followed was different now. Electric, dangerous. Sandra's face drained of color. That's not possible. Nathaniel didn't move, didn't smile, didn't vindicate himself. He simply watched as the realization spread like spilled water across the terminal. Brennan's hand dropped from his radio. Victor took a step back. Sandra's fingers trembled on her keyboard. "Sir," Victor said, his voice tight. "I apologize for the confusion. If you'd like to board—" "No," Nathaniel said. He reached into his jacket pocket, and 3 hands went to 3 holsters. He pulled out his phone with 2 fingers, held it up so they could see. "I'm making a call first." He dialed. It rang once. "Leah," he said when the line connected. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Protocol Raven. Observation mode. Washington National Gate 12. Regalis Airways Flight 447 to San Francisco." "Confirmed," came the reply, crisp and professional. "Initiating documentation. Do you require immediate extraction?" "No, let it play out. I want everything." He ended the call. The entire exchange had taken 11 seconds. Sandra found her voice. "Sir, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you can't just—" "Can't what?" Nathaniel's voice cut through hers like a blade through silk. "Can't document being illegally denied boarding. Can't record a gate agent who assumed a black man couldn't afford first class. Can't collect evidence of discrimination that violates about 7 federal statutes. I can name off the top of my head." "I never said anything about race," Sandra stammered. "You didn't have to." The crowd had grown. Other gates had emptied passengers drawn by the commotion. Someone was recording on their phone. Several people were recording. Jamal pushed through the crowd, his intern badge swinging. "Mr. Cole, sir, I work for you. I'm in the Cloud Infrastructure Division. I just want to say—" "What's your name?" Nathaniel asked. "Jamal. Jamal Rivers." "Jamal Rivers." Nathaniel committed it to memory. "You spoke up. That took courage." I couldn't believe what I was seeing." A woman in a business suit stepped forward. "I saw the whole thing. She targeted him the moment he reached the podium. I'll testify to that." "Me too," said an older man with a cane. "Been flying for 40 years. Never seen anything like this." Sandra's face had gone from pale to red. "This is ridiculous. I was doing my job. We have protocols." "Protocols." Nathaniel's laugh was soft, humorless. "Yes, let's talk about protocols." He turned to face the growing crowd, his voice carrying without him raising it. "My name is Nathaniel Cole. I'm the founder and CEO of Cole Dynamics. We design and maintain AI systems for security logistics and operations management. Our clients include 43 airports across the United States, including this one. Regalis Airways uses our systems for baggage handling, flight scheduling, and passenger verification." He paused. Let that sink in. "And 15 minutes ago, I was profiled, harassed, and threatened with arrest for attempting to board a flight I legally purchased, not because I was a security threat, not because I was disruptive, but because a gate agent looked at me and decided I didn't belong in first class." Sandra was shaking now. "I want to speak to my supervisor." "Your supervisor," Nathaniel said, "is going to want to speak to a lawyer." A man in a Regalis Airways manager uniform came rushing through the crowd, his face flushed. "What's going on here, Sandra? What the hell, Mr. Cole?" His eyes went wide. "Mr. Cole, I'm David Preston, Terminal Operations Manager. I am so sorry about this confusion." "Confusion?" Nathaniel's voice was ice. "Your employee accused me of fraud, called security to remove me, and refused to honor a valid ticket. That's not confusion. That's discrimination." David's Adam's apple bobbed. "Sir, if we could discuss this privately?" "No, we're done discussing." Nathaniel picked up his briefcase. For a moment, everyone thought he was going to leave. Instead, he walked to the windows overlooking the tarmac, where a Regalis Airways 787 gleamed in the afternoon sun. "Beautiful plane," he said. "Powered by systems my company designed. The navigation, the passenger management, the automated safety checks. all of it running on Cole Dynamics infrastructure. He turned back to face the crowd. I built my company from nothing. Wrote my first code on a library computer because we couldn't afford one at home. Worked 3 jobs to put myself through MIT. Started Cole Dynamics in a garage with $12,000 in savings, and a dream that technology could make the world more efficient, more fair, more human. His voice grew softer, more dangerous. I've been called brilliant, visionary, a genius. Forbes put me on their cover. The president invited me to the White House. I've dined with kings and advised senators. But today, at an American airport, I was treated like a criminal because of the color of my skin. Sandra tried to speak. I never... Save it. Nathaniel cut her off. Your words are being recorded by 17 different phones, 3 security cameras, and a professional documentation team I keep on retainer for exactly this kind of situation. Anything you say now will be used in a lawsuit that will make legal history. David Preston's face had gone gray. Mr. Cole, please can we... Can you what? Offer me a free upgrade, comp my flight, give me a voucher and hope I go away quietly. Nathaniel shook his head. I'm a billionaire, Mr. Preston. I don't need your vouchers. He walked toward the gate and the crowd parted like water. But I'll tell you what I do need. He continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the terminal. I need accountability. I need justice. I need a world where my nephew can fly without fear, where my daughter, when I have one, won't be treated like she stole her ticket, where a young intern like Jamal doesn't have to risk his career to speak the truth. He stopped at the podium facing Sandra directly. You made a choice today. You looked at me and made a decision based on nothing but prejudice. And now, I'm making a choice too. What choice? Sandra whispered. Nathaniel's smile was cold enough to frost glass. You'll see. He turned and walked away from the gate, Jamal hurrying behind him. Mr. Cole, wait. Victor, the younger security guard, called out. Sir, you have every right to board that plane. I'll escort you personally. I'll make sure, Victor. Nathaniel stopped. You showed doubt. You questioned whether this was right. That matters. Remember today. Remember that silence is complicity. Victor nodded, his jaw tight. As Nathaniel walked through the terminal, passengers stared. Some looked ashamed. Others looked angry. But not at him, at Sandra, at Brennan, at the system that let this happen. At the terminal exit, Nathaniel paused and made another call. Leah, observation mode has concluded. Initiate protocol, Raven, full execution. All assets. Leah's voice was crisp. All assets. I want the research team on Regalis Airways corporate structure. Financial records, board members, past discrimination cases, everything. I want our legal team to file a federal complaint by end of business today. And Leah, sir, find out how many times this has happened before, how many people they've done this to who didn't have the resources to fight back. Already on it. We pulled initial data during observation. Nathaniel, it's worse than you think. It always is. He ended the call and stood for a moment looking back at the terminal. Somewhere in there, Sandra McKee was probably crying. David Preston was probably calling his superiors. Brennan was probably pretending nothing happened, and Regalis Airways had no idea what was coming. Nathaniel's phone buzzed. A text from Leah. Initial findings: 47 documented complaints against Sandra McKee in past 6 years. 31 involved racial profiling. All were dismissed internally. Company has 2.3 M in settlements from similar cases buried in operating expenses. Board meeting scheduled for Thursday in Chicago. Nathaniel read it twice. 47 complaints. 31 involving race. All dismissed. He typed back, I want names. Every person she targeted. Every complaint that was buried. Every executive who signed off on it. 3 dots appeared. Then, you're not just going after her, are you? No, he typed. I'm going after the entire company. Behind him, Jamal Rivers caught up, breathing hard. Mr. Cole, I just want to say, what you did back there was incredible, standing up like that. Most people would have just... Most people don't have the privilege to fight, Nathaniel said. I do. So I will. Is there anything I can do? Anything to help? Nathaniel studied the young man. 23, maybe 24. Bright eyes, eager energy, an intern badge that meant he was probably drowning in student debt and working twice as hard as his white colleagues to prove himself. What division did you say you were in? Cloud infrastructure. I'm actually working on the airport integration project. The new passenger flow algorithms. You know the systems. Inside and out, sir. Nathaniel made a decision. How would you like to move from intern to analyst full salary benefits and a front row seat to what happens when you don't back down from injustice? Jamal's eyes went wide. Are you serious? I'm always serious, but I need to know, can you handle what's coming? It's going to get ugly. The press, the lawsuits, the pushback. People are going to say I'm being vindictive, playing the race card, using my power irresponsibly. Mr. Cole. Jamal said, his voice steady now. I've been that guy. The one who gets followed in stores. Pulled over for driving a nice car. Questioned when I'm in a nice neighborhood. I know what you're fighting for. And yes, sir, I can handle it. Then call me Nathaniel, and welcome to the team. They shook hands in the middle of Washington National Airport, while somewhere above them, Flight 447 took off without its first-class passenger. But Nathaniel wasn't worried about missing a flight. He was planning to own the whole damn airline. 3 hours later, in the secure conference room at Cole Dynamics headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, Nathaniel sat at the head of a table surrounded by his core team. Leah Okoro, his head of security, and a former Secret Service agent, projected data onto the screens covering 3 walls. Her dark skin gleamed under the fluorescent lights, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp. Marcus Chen, his CFO, was typing furiously on a laptop, his glasses sliding down his nose. Dr. Sarah Reeves, his chief legal counsel, and a woman who'd argued cases before the Supreme Court, was already drafting documents. And now, Jamal, still looking slightly shell-shocked, sat with a laptop pulling up system architectures. All right, Nathaniel said. Let's see what we're dealing with. Leah pulled up the first screen. Regalis Airways, founded 1987, publicly traded since 1995. Annual revenue $23.7 billion. CEO Charles Whitmore, age 58, been with the company 30 years. Board of directors, 12 members, 11 white men, 1 white woman. Diverse, Marcus muttered. Current market cap, $8.2 billion. Stock price has been declining for 18 months due to operational issues and customer complaints. They're vulnerable. Sarah looked up from her notes. Vulnerable how? They're bleeding money. Fuel costs, labor disputes, aging fleet. They've been cutting corners to stay profitable. And Nathaniel, you're going to love this. They're currently in negotiations for a major defense contract worth $450 million. Guess whose systems they need to fulfill that contract? Nathaniel smiled. Ours. Ours, Leah confirmed. Without Cole Dynamics' AI integration, they can't meet the security requirements. Marcus whistled. So we have leverage. We have a nuclear option, Sarah corrected. But we need to be careful. If we pull support, we could be accused of retaliation. It's not retaliation if they breached contract terms, Nathaniel said. Pull up our service agreement. Jamal's fingers flew across his keyboard. Got it. Section 7, Paragraph 3. Provider reserves the right to terminate services in the event of discriminatory practices or violations of civil rights that impact brand association or ethical standards. Sarah grinned. You sneaky bastard. You wrote yourself an out. I write everything with an out. What else? Leah advanced to the next screen. Sandra McKee, 47 years old, 23 years with Regalis. 47 complaints, 31 involving racial discrimination, 12 involving passenger harassment, 8 involving verbal abuse. Her supervisor is David Preston, who we met. He's buried 19 of those complaints personally. Why wasn't she fired? Jamal asked. Union protection, Marcus said. And the company probably figured it was cheaper to settle quietly than deal with wrongful termination suits. They were wrong, Nathaniel said. What about the other cases, the settlements Leah mentioned? Sarah pulled up a document. I've been digging. In the past decade, Regalis has paid out $14.3 million in discrimination settlements. Race, gender, disability, you name it. And here's the kicker, they structured them as customer service remediation in their financial reports. Buried it so deep, the shareholders don't even know. That's securities fraud, Marcus said. That's criminal, Sarah corrected. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair. So we have discrimination, financial misconduct, breach of contract potential, and a company that's already struggling. What's their exposure? Total. Marcus calculated on his laptop. If this goes public the right way, their stock could drop 30 to 40% in a week. They'd be fighting off hostile takeovers, shareholder lawsuits, and a PR nightmare. And if the SEC opens an investigation into the hidden settlements, they're done, Leah finished. The room fell silent. Nathaniel, Sarah said carefully, you understand what you're proposing. Taking down a $23 billion company because of one gate agent's racism. No, Nathaniel said. Taking down a $23 billion company because they've built a culture that allows and protects racism. Sandra McKee isn't the disease. She's a symptom. The press will crucify you, Sarah warned. They'll say you're overreacting, being vindictive, using your wealth and power to destroy people's livelihoods. Let them. Nathaniel. Sarah. How many people do you think Sandra McKee has done this to? How many didn't have the resources to fight back? How many just accepted the humiliation because they didn't think anyone would believe them? He stood walking to the windows overlooking the city. I got lucky. I built something that gave me power. But for every Nathaniel Cole, there are 1,000 people who get denied, degraded, and dismissed every single day. And companies like Regalis count on them being too afraid or too tired to fight back. He turned to face his team. Well, I'm not afraid, and I'm sure as hell not tired. So here's what we're going to do. The city lights of Arlington glittered below them like a constellation of possibilities. Nathaniel stood at the window for a long moment, his reflection ghosted against the glass before turning back to his team. We're going to dismantle them piece by piece, he said. But we're going to do it legally, thoroughly, and publicly. I want every victim's story told, every buried complaint exposed, every executive who enabled this held accountable. Marcus closed his laptop. That's going to take time, resources, and a lot of people who are willing to come forward. Then we start tonight. Nathaniel walked back to the table. Leah, I want your team to conduct a full background investigation on Regalis Airways' executive structure, not just financials. I want personal histories, business relationships, any connections to discrimination cases in other companies. Leah was already taking notes. I'll have a preliminary report by morning. Sarah, file the federal complaint like we discussed. But I also want you to reach out to the EEOC, the DOT's Office of Civil Rights, and any other oversight body that has jurisdiction. Make noise. Make sure this doesn't get buried in bureaucracy. On it, Sarah said. But Nathaniel, you need to prepare yourself. The moment we file Regalis is going to come at you with everything they have. Defamation claims, countersuits, character assassination in the media. Let them try. Nathaniel's voice was steel. Marcus, I want a full financial analysis of Regalis. What are they worth? What would it cost to acquire a controlling interest, and what's their debt situation? Marcus's eyebrows shot up. You're serious about buying them? As a heart attack. If we can't fix them from the outside, we'll do it from the inside. A hostile takeover of a major airline? Marcus whistled. That's going to require significant capital. We're talking billions. Then start moving assets. Liquidate what we need to. Set up the acquisition fund. I want options on my desk by Friday. Jamal, who had been quiet until now, raised his hand tentatively. Sir Nathaniel, I have a question. Go ahead. The airport systems. Our systems. If we wanted to, I don't know, apply pressure, what would happen if there were, say, technical difficulties? The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at the young analyst. Sarah spoke first. That would be sabotage. We'd be criminally liable. Unless, Jamal said slowly, it was a legitimate technical issue, a glitch. The kind of thing that happens when systems aren't properly maintained or when security protocols detect anomalies. Nathaniel studied him. Explain. Our AI systems monitor for irregularities, right? Security threats, operational inefficiencies, safety violations. What if the systems at Washington National started detecting issues with Regalus's operations? Not things we create, but things that are already there. We just amplify the scrutiny. Leah leaned forward. You're talking about using our own systems to audit them in real time. Exactly. Every minor violation, every safety shortcut, every protocol breach, instead of the system smoothing over it like it usually does, it flags it, loud and clear. To the FAA, the TSA, everyone who needs to know. That's brilliant, Marcus breathed. We're not sabotaging anything. We're just being exceptionally thorough about safety compliance. Sarah frowned. It's a legal gray area. But if we document everything, if we can show that we're acting in good faith to ensure safety... It's not revenge, Nathaniel said. It's responsibility. Exactly, Jamal said. Nathaniel smiled. I knew I hired you for a reason. Make it happen. But Jamal, every flag needs to be legitimate. I want documentation, data proof. We're not manufacturing problems. We're just stopping ourselves from hiding them. Understood. All right. Nathaniel checked his watch. 9:47. It's late. Everyone go home, get some rest. Tomorrow this becomes public. And once it does, there's no going back. The team filed out, but Leah lingered behind. You okay? She asked when they were alone. Nathaniel sank into his chair. For the first time since leaving the airport, he allowed himself to feel the weight of the day. No. But I will be. What they did to you wasn't new, Leah. It's just the first time I had the power to do something about it. He looked up at her. That's what makes me angry. Not what happened to me, but thinking about all the times it happened before I had this power. All the times I couldn't fight back. Leah pulled up a chair. You know this is going to get ugly. I'm counting on it. Nathaniel, I'm serious. Charles Whitmore isn't going to roll over. He's old money, old power. He's going to use every connection, every favor, every dirty trick in the book. Good, Nathaniel said. Let him. Every attack he makes, every underhanded move, it just proves my point. The system protects people like him and punishes people like me. Well, not anymore. Leah nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I'm proud to work for you. And I'm proud to be part of this fight. After she left, Nathaniel sat alone in the conference room, the city lights his only company. His phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Cole, this is Victor Grant, the security officer from the airport. I want you to know I submitted a formal incident report. Everything I saw. I don't know if it matters, but I couldn't stay silent. Nathaniel typed back. It matters. Thank you. 3 dots appeared then. They're saying you're going to destroy the airline, that people will lose their jobs. Is that true? Nathaniel considered his answer carefully. I'm going to hold them accountable. What happens after that is up to them. But I won't let good people suffer for leadership's failures. You have my word. Thank you, sir. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have done more. You did enough. You showed doubt. You questioned. That's where change starts. He set the phone down and pulled up his laptop, drafting an email he knew would change everything. The recipient line read every major news outlet he could think of. The subject line, a billionaire, a boarding pass, and the bias that cost an airline everything. He attached the documentation videos, witness statements, Sandra McKee's complaint history, Regelis's hidden settlements. Everything. His finger hovered over the send button. Once he pressed it, the world would know. His story would become public property. His humiliation, his anger, his fight, all of it would be dissected, analyzed, weaponized. But silence was worse than exposure. He pressed send. By 6 the next morning, the world was on fire. Nathaniel's phone started ringing at 5:53. He ignored it. By 6:15, there were 47 missed calls. By 7, cable news had picked up the story. By 8, it was trending #1 on every social media platform. The headlines varied in tone, but not in substance. Tech billionaire denied first-class seat launches, war against major airline. Nathaniel Cole racial profiling at 30,000 feet. Regelis Airways faces backlash after CEO discrimination incident. But it was the video that broke the internet. Several someones had posted their footage from the airport. Within hours, it had been viewed 30 million times, 40 million, 60 million. The world watched Sandra McKee's face as she profiled Nathaniel, watched Brennan's aggressive stance, watched the crowd's complicit silence broken only by Jamal's brave recognition, and they watched Nathaniel's quiet dignity, his measured words, his refusal to be cowed. The comment sections exploded. Some people defended Regelis, claimed Nathaniel was overreacting, playing the race card. But they were drowned out by thousands of others sharing their own stories. Stories of being profiled, harassed, humiliated while traveling. A hashtag emerged. #IStandWithCole. By noon, it was trending worldwide. Nathaniel sat in his office watching the news with Leah. CNN had brought in a panel of experts. A civil rights attorney praised his documentation and evidence. A corporate consultant worried about the economic impact. A former airline executive called it a regrettable misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, Nathaniel muttered. That's the word they always use. His phone rang. Marcus. Turn on CNBC, Marcus said without preamble. Nathaniel switched channels. The stock market ticker ran across the bottom of the screen. Regelis Airways stock price was in freefall, down 18% and dropping. The market's reacting, Marcus said. Investors are spooked. There's already talk of an emergency board meeting. How much would we need to acquire a controlling interest? Nathaniel asked. At current prices, maybe $4 billion, but if it drops another 20%, then we wait. Let them panic. He hung up and turned to Leah. Any word from Regelis? Their PR team released a statement an hour ago. The standard non-apology apology. We take all allegations seriously. We're conducting an internal review. This doesn't reflect our values. The usual garbage. What about Sandra McKee? Placed on administrative leave. David Preston, too. Not fired. Not yet. But Nathaniel, there's something else. We've been getting calls. Lots of calls. From other people Sandra McKee targeted. Other passengers who experienced discrimination on Regelis flights. Some of them years ago. They're all saying the same thing. They were told there was nothing they could do. That it was their word against the airlines. That they should just accept the apology and move on. Nathaniel felt his jaw tighten. How many? So far 43, and that's just in the last 6 hours. I want to talk to them. All of them. Nathaniel, that's a lot of... I want to talk to them, he repeated. Set up calls. I'll do as many as it takes. These people deserve to be heard. Over the next 2 days, Nathaniel barely slept. He spoke to 17 people who'd been victimized by Regelis Airways staff. Their stories made his blood boil. There was Marcus Thompson, a black cardiologist who'd been accused of stealing headphones from first-class headphones that were complimentary. There was Aisha Patel, an Indian-American software engineer who'd been randomly selected for additional screening 6 flights in a row until she started flying different airlines. There was James Park, a Korean-American veteran who'd been told the plane was overbooked when his first-class seat was given to a white passenger despite having a confirmed reservation. Each story was documented, each voice recorded with permission, each testimony another nail in Regalis Airways' coffin. Sarah compiled them into a legal brief that read like an indictment of systemic racism. Meanwhile, Jamal had been busy with his own investigation. The young analyst had proven to be worth every penny of his new salary. He'd gone through years of system logs, passenger data, and operational records. What he found was damning. "Nathaniel, you need to see this," Jamal said, bursting into his office on the 3rd day. He pulled up a data visualization on the large screen. "This is passenger complaint data for Regalis Airways over the past 5 years. I cross-referenced it with demographic information, flight routes, and resolution outcomes." The graph showed a clear pattern. Complaints from passengers with ethnic names were 73% more likely to be dismissed without investigation. Complaints from black passengers specifically were resolved in the airline's favor 84% of the time. "That's not a coincidence," Nathaniel said. "It gets worse. Look at this." Jamal pulled up another chart. Compensation data. When white passengers file complaints, they receive an average of $487 in compensation. When black passengers file the same complaints, the average drops to $127. They're literally valuing us less. Systematically. And it's not just one station or one region. It's company-wide, built into their customer service algorithms. Algorithms we helped design. No, Jamal said quickly. They built their own customer service tier system. We only handle security and logistics. But Nathaniel, this is proof. Mathematical, undeniable proof of institutional racism. Send it to Sarah and leak it to the press. Leak it. You sure? This is bigger than me now. People need to know what they're supporting when they fly Regalis. The data leak hit the news cycle like a bomb. Major outlets commissioned their own analyses, verified the findings, and the results were unanimous. Regalis Airways had been systematically discriminating against minorities for years. The airline's stock dropped another 15%. But that was nothing compared to what happened next. At exactly 3:37 p.m. on Thursday, every Regalis Airways flight using Washington National Airport experienced simultaneous technical difficulties. Baggage systems malfunctioned. Check-in kiosks froze. Flight information displays went dark. Security scanners flagged random passengers for secondary screening, all of them. Regalis employees trying to get to work. It lasted for 3 hours, long enough to cause massive delays, long enough for hundreds of passengers to miss connections, long enough for the evening news to cover it live. Nathaniel watched from his office as reporters interviewed stranded passengers. "This is outrageous," one businessman fumed. "I've been stuck here for 4 hours. Nobody can tell me anything." "Maybe now they know how it feels," an older black woman said to the camera. "To be delayed, humiliated, and ignored. Welcome to our world." The reporter looked taken aback, but the woman wasn't finished. "I stand with Nathaniel Cole, and if this is what it takes to make these airlines treat us like human beings, then so be it." The clip went viral immediately. Leah walked into Nathaniel's office, her expression carefully neutral. "That wasn't us, was it? Define us." Nathaniel. "Leah, our systems detected 17 legitimate safety violations in Regalis's operations today. 17. From improper baggage handling to expired security credentials to maintenance logs that hadn't been updated in 6 weeks. So yes, our systems flagged them, and yes, it caused delays, but every single flag was legitimate. And the timing is unfortunate. For them." Leah shook her head, but she was smiling. "You're dangerous, you know that. Only to people who deserve it." His phone rang, an unknown number with a Chicago area code. He answered. Nathaniel Cole. Mr. Cole. The voice was smooth, cultivated, dripping with controlled fury. This is Charles Whitmore, CEO of Regalis Airways. I think we need to talk. Nathaniel put the phone on speaker so Leah could hear. Mr. Whitmore, I was wondering when you'd call. What happened at Washington National was unfortunate. Unfortunate. That's an interesting word choice. And we're conducting a thorough internal investigation. But Mr. Cole, what you're doing now, this media circus, the stock manipulation. This has gone far enough. Stock manipulation. I'm not responsible for your company's stock price. Mr. Whitmore, the market is reacting to information about your business practices. Information that was already public record, by the way. I just made it easier to find. You're destroying people's livelihoods. Thousands of employees who had nothing to do with this incident. No, Nathaniel said, his voice hardening. You destroyed people's dignity, for years. And you did it systematically, deliberately, and without remorse. I'm just making sure there are consequences. I'm prepared to offer you a settlement. $10 million, a public apology, termination of the employee involved, whatever you want. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? Everything, Nathaniel said. I want every executive who enabled this discrimination fired. I want an independent investigation with full transparency. I want compensation for every victim. I want a complete overhaul of your customer service policies. And I want it all documented and enforced by federal oversight. Silence on the other end of the line. You're insane, Charles finally said. No, I'm motivated. There's a difference. You realize I have resources too. Lawyers, connections, political influence. I can make your life very difficult, Mr. Cole. You're welcome to try. But ask yourself, do you really want to go to war with the man whose technology runs the airports your planes use? The man who has documentation of every safety violation, every buried complaint, every dirty little secret your company has hidden for decades? That's extortion. No, that's leverage. Extortion would be if I demanded something illegal. I'm demanding justice. If you can't tell the difference, that explains a lot about why we're in this situation. Charles's breathing was audible over the phone. This isn't over. You're right. It's just beginning. The line went dead. Leah whistled. Well, that was aggressive. He threatened me first. Fair point. What do you think he'll do? Everything he said. Lawyers, media attacks, political pressure. He's going to try to paint me as an angry black man with a vendetta, as someone who's too emotional, too irrational, too dangerous. And how do we counter that? By being none of those things. We stay calm, stay focused, and stay factual. Every move we make is documented. Every claim we make is verified. They can call me angry all they want, but they can't call me wrong. Over the next 24 hours, Charles Whitmore made good on his threat. Regalis Airways' legal team filed a defamation suit against Nathaniel, claiming he was deliberately damaging the company's reputation with false allegations. Conservative media outlets began running segments questioning Nathaniel's motives. One prominent commentator suggested he was weaponizing race for financial gain. Another implied he was being manipulated by activist groups. But for every attack, there were 10 defenses. Civil rights organizations rallied behind Nathaniel. Tech leaders publicly supported him. Passengers organized a boycott of Regalis Airways that grew larger by the hour. And then the victims started going public. Marcus Thompson, the cardiologist, gave an interview to NPR detailing his humiliation. Aisha Patel wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about her experiences. James Park appeared on CNN, his military medals displayed proudly, describing how Regalis had treated a man who'd served his country. Each story added fuel to the fire. Each testimony made it harder for Regalis to claim this was an isolated incident. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the incident at the airport, Nathaniel received an unexpected visitor. "Sir," his assistant said over the intercom, "there's a Sandra McKee here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." Nathaniel exchanged a look with Leah, who happened to be in his office reviewing security protocols. Send her in, he said, but stay close. Already ahead of you. Leah murmured, her hand moving subtly to her phone. Sandra McKee looked nothing like the confident gate agent from a week ago. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands trembling. She'd aged 10 years in 7 days. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Please. I need to talk to you. Nathaniel didn't stand, didn't offer her a chair, just waited. I'm sorry, Sandra said and started crying. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was horrible. I've been thinking about what I did every minute of every day, and I need you to know I'm sorry. Are you? Nathaniel's voice was flat. Yes, I never meant to. I didn't think. That's the problem, Ms. McKee. You didn't think. You looked at me and made an assumption based on nothing but the color of my skin. And you did it without hesitation, without doubt, without even considering that you might be wrong. I know I did. And I'm so ashamed. Are you ashamed of what you did? Or are you ashamed that you got caught? Sandra flinched. Both. I don't know. Mr. Cole, please. I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my friends won't even talk to me. My daughter won't speak to me. I'm getting death threats. People recognize me in public and spit at me. I can't. I don't know how to fix this. You can't, Nathaniel said simply. You can't unhumiliate me. You can't give back the dignity you stripped away. You can't erase the fact that you did this not just to me, but to 47 other people over 6 years. I didn't. Don't lie. We have the documentation. Every complaint. Every person you profiled, harassed, and demeaned. And we have proof that your supervisors knew and did nothing. Sandra sank into a chair, uninvited, her face in her hands. What do you want from me? She sobbed. The truth, Nathaniel said. All of it. On record. Who knew about the complaints? Who told you to bury them? What did the company train you to do when passengers complained about discrimination? Sandra looked up, fear and hope warring in her eyes. If I tell you everything, will you call off your lawyers? No, but I'll make sure the truth comes out. That you're not the only one held accountable. That the executives who enabled you face consequences too. They'll destroy me. They already did. You just didn't realize it yet. Sandra sat in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, I'll tell you everything. And she did. Over the next 3 hours, Sandra McKee dismantled Regalis Airways from the inside out. Leah recorded everything with Sandra's signed consent, while Sarah joined them via video conference, asking precise legal questions that left no room for ambiguity. Sandra's hands shook as she described the training sessions where customer service managers taught gate agents to manage expectations for passengers who didn't fit the first-class profile. The coded language they used, aggressive, suspicious, confrontational, that really meant black, brown, or poor. They never said it explicitly. Sandra explained, her voice hollow. But we all knew what they meant. When a supervisor said someone looked out of place, we knew who they were talking about. And when we flagged those passengers and nothing happened when we got praised for maintaining standards, we learned to do it more. Who praised you? Sarah asked from the screen. David Preston mostly. Sometimes regional managers. They'd send emails thanking us for our vigilance after we denied upgrades or called security on certain passengers. Do you still have those emails? Sandra pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. I saved everything. I thought one day I might need proof that I was just following orders. I know how that sounds. Like I'm trying to excuse what I did. But I'm not. I made choices. Bad choices. I'm just saying the company wanted this. She forwarded 17 emails to Sarah's secure server. Each one was a smoking gun supervisors congratulating agents for catching fraud. When no fraud existed, praising security awareness that was really racial profiling, rewarding premium service protection, That was code for keeping first-class white. But the real bombshell came when Sandra described the settlement process. When passengers complained we had a system, she said. If they were white, we'd apologize, offer compensation, maybe a free upgrade. But if they were black or brown, we'd deny everything. Make them prove discrimination. Most people didn't have the energy or resources to fight, so they'd eventually accept a small voucher and sign an NDA. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. How many? I don't know exactly. Hundreds. The legal department handled the actual settlements, but we'd get memos about them. Warnings to be more careful with documentation, to avoid putting certain things in writing. Who sent those memos? Charles Whitmore himself, and Janet Carmichael, the chief legal counsel. Sarah's eyes gleamed on the screen. That's conspiracy. That's the C-suite knowingly covering up civil rights violations. Sandra nodded miserably. There's more. Last year, a compliance officer tried to report the pattern of discrimination to the Department of Transportation. He was fired within a week. They claimed budget cuts, but everyone knew why he was really gone. What was his name? Nathaniel asked. Robert Chen. He was one of the good ones. He actually cared about doing the right thing. Leah was already typing. I'll find him. By the time Sandra left, escorted out a back entrance to avoid the media camped outside Cole Dynamics, Nathaniel had enough evidence to bring down not just a gate agent, but an entire corporate structure built on systematic discrimination. This is bigger than we thought, Sarah said, still on the video call. We're not talking about a few bad actors. We're talking about institutional corruption that goes all the way to the CEO. Then we take it all the way to the CEO, Nathaniel replied. Get this to the DOJ, the FBI, every federal agency with jurisdiction. And Sarah, make sure Robert Chen knows we want to talk to him. Within 24 hours, Robert Chen was sitting in Nathaniel's conference room, his face a mixture of vindication and lingering bitterness. I tried to warn them, Robert said. He was in his 40s, meticulously dressed with the careful manner of someone who'd been burned by speaking truth to power. I compiled 2 years of data showing discriminatory patterns in passenger treatment, complaint resolution, and compensation. I presented it to the executive team with recommendations for reform. What happened? Nathaniel asked. Charles Whitmore called me into his office, told me I was creating problems where none existed, said I was seeing racism in normal business practices. Then he suggested I was making other employees uncomfortable with my political agenda. Robert's laugh was bitter. My political agenda was equal treatment under the law. When did they fire you? 6 days later. Handed me a severance package with an NDA attached. They offered me 6 months' salary if I agreed to never discuss my findings publicly and never work for a competing airline. He paused. I didn't sign it. Marcus looked up from his laptop. That's why they sued you for breach of contract. Wait, they sued him. Nathaniel's voice went cold. Ongoing case, Robert confirmed. They claim I violated confidentiality agreements by keeping copies of my research. I claim my research documented illegal activity which isn't protected by NDAs. We've been in litigation for 8 months. It's cost me $70,000 in legal fees so far. Nathaniel made a decision. Sarah take over his case, pro bono, and counter-sue for wrongful termination and retaliation. Robert's eyes widened. Mr. Cole, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm insisting. You tried to do the right thing, and they destroyed you for it. That ends now. Nathaniel leaned forward. But Robert, I need everything you have. Every document, every email, every piece of data. Can you do that? Already ahead of you. Robert pulled a thumb drive from his pocket. I've been waiting 3 years for someone to care enough to listen. The data on Robert Chen's drive was devastating. He'd documented everything: racial disparities in service compensation gaps, promotion, discrimination, even evidence that Regalis systematically assigned less experienced pilots to routes serving predominantly black communities. But the most damning evidence was financial. Robert had tracked the settlement payments and found something extraordinary. Regalis Airways had created a shell company in the Cayman Islands specifically to hide discrimination settlements from shareholders and regulators. Over 8 years, they'd funneled $47 million through this company, listing it as operational consulting fees on their public filings. That's securities fraud. Marcus said, his voice awed. That's not just civil penalties. That's federal prison time. Sarah was already on the phone with contacts at the Securities and Exchange Commission. Within an hour, she had confirmation that they were opening an investigation. By evening, the FBI had joined in looking at potential wire fraud and conspiracy charges. The news broke at 6 p.m. on Sunday evening. The Wall Street Journal published a bombshell exposé titled Regalis Airways: How a Major Airline Hid Millions in Discrimination Settlements Through Offshore Accounts. The article was brutal. It detailed the shell company, the hidden settlements, Robert Chen's firing, and Sandra McKee's testimony about institutional racism. It included quotes from 17 victims, data from Robert's research, and damning emails from Charles Whitmore and other executives. The reaction was seismic. Regalis Airways stock went into freefall when markets opened Monday morning, down 30% in the first hour. Trading was halted twice for volatility. By noon, the company had lost $2.4 billion in market capitalization. Emergency board meetings were called. Shareholders demanded answers. 3 major institutional investors announced they were divesting their holdings, and then the systems started failing. It began at Chicago O'Hare at 7:33 Monday morning. Every Regalis Airways flight using the terminal experienced simultaneous computer issues. Check-in systems crashed. Baggage handlers couldn't access load plans. Pilots couldn't pull up flight plans. For 47 minutes, Regalis Airways was effectively grounded at one of the nation's busiest airports. By the time they got O'Hare back online, Dallas-Fort Worth went down. Then Atlanta. Then Denver. Each outage lasted just long enough to cause maximum chaos. Missed connections. Stranded passengers canceled flights. Each time the root cause was listed as technical difficulties with vendor systems. Those vendor systems belonged to Cole Dynamics. Nathaniel watched the chaos unfold from his office, Jamal beside him monitoring the system logs. Every flag is legitimate, Jamal said for the 3rd time that morning. These are real safety violations, real protocol breaches. We're not creating anything. We're just not overlooking them anymore. I know, Nathaniel said, but he also knew how it looked. The timing was too perfect, too coordinated. The media was already speculating about revenge, about a tech billionaire weaponizing his power. Let them speculate. His phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, but the area code was Chicago. He answered. "You're destroying my company." Charles Whitmore's voice was ragged, stripped of its earlier confidence. "Hundreds of flights canceled, thousands of passengers stranded. This is economic terrorism. This is your company failing to meet basic safety standards," Nathaniel replied calmly. "Every system failure has been accompanied by detailed documentation of the violations that triggered it. If you don't want your flights grounded, maybe maintain your equipment properly. You know damn well this isn't about safety. This is revenge." "Is it? Then explain to me why your maintenance logs at O'Hare showed 3 aircraft with expired safety certifications. Explain why your baggage systems in Atlanta were running on software that hasn't been updated in 7 months despite our repeated warnings. Explain why your pilots in Denver were operating with flight plans that didn't account for updated weight restrictions." Silence. "You can't, can you? Because you've been cutting corners for years, Charles. Putting profits over safety, shareholder value over passenger welfare. You just got away with it because our systems were designed to be forgiving, to smooth over minor violations. Well, not anymore. Now we're holding you to the standards you agreed to when you signed our service contract. The SEC is investigating us, Charles said, his voice barely controlled. The FBI showed up at our headquarters this morning with warrants. Our stock is in free fall. Major clients are canceling contracts. You've gotten what you wanted. So please just stop. Tell me what it will take to make this stop. Nathaniel let the silence stretch. Outside his window, Arlington glittered in the morning sun. Somewhere out there, Sandra McKee was probably hiding from reporters. Robert Chen was probably smiling for the first time in years. And 47 people who'd been humiliated by Regalis Airways were probably watching the news with satisfaction. I want to buy your company, Nathaniel said. What? You heard me. Your stock is at 23 dollars per share and dropping. Your market cap is under $6 billion and falling. Your board is in crisis mode. Your institutional investors are fleeing. In about 48 hours, you're going to be vulnerable to a hostile takeover. I'm offering you an alternative. You want to buy Regalis Airways? Charles's laugh was slightly hysterical. Why would I sell to you? Because the alternative is worse. If you don't sell to me, someone else will buy you. A competitor who'll strip you for parts. A private equity firm that'll load you with debt and bleed you dry. At least if you sell to me, your employees keep their jobs. The company survives. It just survives under new management that actually believes in treating people with dignity. This is insane. My board would never approve. Your board is terrified, Charles. They're facing shareholder lawsuits, federal investigations, and public humiliation. I'm offering them a lifeline. A buyer with deep pockets and no debt who can stabilize the company and protect them from criminal liability. Protect them from... Charles's voice went quiet. Are you saying you'd shield the board from prosecution? I'm saying that if Regalis Airways becomes Cole Air, and if we cooperate fully with federal investigations, and if we implement comprehensive reforms, prosecutors might be inclined to focus on individual bad actors rather than the entire organization. I can't make promises, Charles. But I can make things better than they'll be if you fight this. Another long silence. How much? Charles finally asked. $30 per share, all cash. Tender offer to all shareholders. The deal closes in 60 days, contingent on regulatory approval. That's barely above current market price. That's 15% above where you'll be by Friday if current trends continue. And it's the difference between an orderly transition and a death spiral. Nathaniel's voice softened slightly. I'm not trying to destroy you, Charles. I'm trying to fix what you broke. But I can only do that if I own it. I need to talk to my board. You have 24 hours. After that, my offer drops to $25 per share. And Charles, I'd encourage you to take it. Because if I have to launch a hostile takeover, I won't be nearly as generous with severance packages. He hung up before Charles could respond. Leah, who'd been listening from across the room, whistled softly. You really think he'll sell? He doesn't have a choice. His company is bleeding out. The board knows it. The shareholders know it. The only question is whether they sell to me on reasonable terms or wait until I take it by force. And if they refuse, then we go hostile. Marcus already has the financing lined up. We can move fast if we need to. Marcus looked up from his laptop where he'd been running acquisition scenarios. Actually, we might not need to go hostile. I've been getting calls from major shareholders. Pension funds, mutual funds, institutional investors. They're scared, Nathaniel. They want out. If we can get 20% of shares to tender the board, we'll have to negotiate. Then start making calls. I want commitments by end of business today. The next 18 hours were a blur of phone calls, legal documents, and high-stakes negotiations. Marcus worked his network of institutional investors, convincing them that selling to Cole Dynamics was their best exit. Sarah coordinated with federal regulators, ensuring the acquisition wouldn't face antitrust issues. Leah managed security, protecting Nathaniel from the media frenzy and the increasingly desperate attempts by Regalis to dig up dirt on him. And Nathaniel took calls from the victims. Every person who'd been discriminated against, humiliated, or harmed by Regalis Airways. He listened to their stories, promised them justice, and assured them that their suffering wouldn't be in vain. At 11 p.m. Monday night, his phone rang. Charles Whitmore. "The board voted," Charles said without preamble, 8-4 in favor of accepting your offer. Nathaniel felt something loosen in his chest. "Smart decision. Don't gloat. You're getting a company with billions in debt, aging infrastructure, and a reputation in tatters. I'm getting an opportunity to build something better. When can we announce?" "Our lawyers want 48 hours to finalize terms." 24. "News leaks fast, and I want to control the narrative." "Fine. 24 hours. Charles paused. "What happens to me?" "You resign, publicly. You acknowledge the company's failures under your leadership and commit to cooperating with federal investigations. In exchange, I'll recommend the board approve a severance package. Not the golden parachute you were hoping for, but enough to retire comfortably. And if I refuse, then I release additional documentation that makes you personally liable for conspiracy and fraud. Your choice, Charles. Take the severance and fade away, or fight and face federal prison." The line went dead. 23 hours later, Regalis Airways announced it had accepted a $6.2 billion acquisition offer from Cole Dynamics. The press release was carefully worded, emphasizing continuity of service job protection and commitment to reform. Charles Whitmore's resignation was announced simultaneously along with the departure of 3 other senior executives. The market reacted positively. Regalis stock jumped 18% on the news. Financial analysts called it a white knight acquisition that would save thousands of jobs. But Nathaniel knew the real work was just beginning. 2 days after the acquisition announcement, FBI agents arrested Janet Carmichael, Regalis's chief legal counsel, on charges of conspiracy to commit securities fraud and obstruction of justice. The same day, David Preston was arrested for witness tampering and destruction of evidence. Sandra McKee wasn't arrested. Her cooperation had earned her immunity from prosecution, but her testimony would be crucial in the trials to come. Nathaniel watched the arrests on the news from his office, feeling a grim satisfaction. Justice wasn't just about making things right for himself. It was about ensuring this never happened to anyone else. His phone buzzed with a text from Jamal. "Sir, you should see this." It was a link to a video going viral online. Victor Grant, the young security guard from the airport, had recorded a statement. "My name is Victor Grant," he said, looking directly into the camera. 10 days ago, I was part of something shameful. I watched a man be profiled and harassed because of his race. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't do enough to stop it. Since then, I've learned that staying silent makes you complicit. So I'm speaking up now. To anyone who's ever been treated like they don't belong, I see you. I believe you. And I'm sorry I didn't fight harder." The video had been viewed 12 million times. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. Nathaniel felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. Change didn't just come from the top down. It came from people like Victor finding the courage to speak truth even when it was uncomfortable. His office door opened. Leah walked in with a bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses. "Thought you might need this," she said, pouring. They drank in silence for a moment, watching the sun set over the Potomac. "You did it," Leah finally said. "You actually did it. Took down a $23 billion company and bought it for parts." "Not for parts," Nathaniel corrected. "For transformation." "You really think you can fix it? An entire corporate culture built on discrimination." "I have to try, because if I don't, what was the point? I didn't do all this just to get revenge." "Leah, I did it to make sure no one else has to go through what I went through. What Marcus and Aisha and James and 47 other people went through. That's a big responsibility." "I know," he finished his bourbon. "But I've spent my whole life being told I couldn't do things. Couldn't get into MIT. Couldn't start a tech company. Couldn't compete with Silicon Valley giants. Every time I proved them wrong. So now they're saying, I can't transform an airline, watch me. Leah smiled. You're either the bravest person I know, or the craziest. Can't I be both? The acquisition closed 53 days later, pending federal approval. Nathaniel Cole became the owner of what would soon be renamed Cole Air, with a mandate to rebuild it from the ground up. The night the deal was finalized, Nathaniel returned to Washington National Airport for the first time since the incident. He walked through the terminal slowly, remembering. Gate 12 was quiet now, a different agent working the counter. He stood there for a long moment thinking about how far he'd come, from a humiliated passenger to the owner of the entire airline, from victim to victor. But the victory felt hollow without the promise of real change. He pulled out his phone and called Jamal. I need you to pull together a team, Nathaniel said. Engineers, HR specialists, civil rights consultants, customer service experts. We're rebuilding this airline from scratch. New policies, new training, new culture. I want Cole Air to be proof that a company can be both profitable and ethical. When do we start? Jamal asked. Nathaniel looked around the terminal at the passengers hurrying to their gates, each one trusting that they'd be treated fairly with dignity. We start tomorrow, he said. We've got work to do. The Cole Dynamics headquarters conference room had been transformed into a war room. Whiteboards covered every wall, filled with organizational charts, policy frameworks, and timelines. Nathaniel stood at the center of it all, sleeves rolled up, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. He'd been working 18-hour days for 3 weeks straight, and it showed. But so did his determination. All right, let's review where we are, he said to the assembled team. Jamal sat with his laptop open, Robert Chen beside him, with stacks of compliance documents. Marcus had financial projections spread across the table. Sarah was on video call from Washington, D.C., where she was navigating the regulatory approval process. And Leah stood by the door monitoring security feeds because the death threats hadn't stopped, they'd only gotten more creative. HR first, Nathaniel said, turning to a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and sharp eyes. Dr. Morrison, what are we looking at? Dr. Elena Morrison had spent 30 years reforming corporate cultures at Fortune 500 companies. Nathaniel had hired her away from Boeing with a compensation package that made headlines. She was worth every penny. We've completed initial assessments of all 47,000 Regali's employees, Elena said, pulling up a presentation. The good news is that most of them are decent people trapped in a toxic system. They want to do the right thing, but have been trained, incentivized, and sometimes threatened into discriminatory practices. And the bad news? Nathaniel asked. We've identified 327 employees who are actively resistant to change. Middle managers mostly, who built their careers on the old system and see reform as a threat to their power. They're already organizing resistance, spreading rumors, trying to poison the well before we even begin implementation. Fire them, Marcus said bluntly. Can't, Sarah interjected from the screen. Mass terminations would trigger union grievances and potentially violate the acquisition terms. We have to handle this carefully. Nathaniel nodded slowly. What if we offer them a choice voluntary separation, with generous severance or stay, and commit to the new culture? Full training, full accountability, but a genuine chance to change. Some will take the money and run, Elena said. The true believers in the old way, but others might surprise you. People can change when given the right incentives and support. Then let's give them that chance. But Elena, I want it clear that this is their only chance. One instance of discrimination under the new regime, and they're done. No warnings, no second opportunities. Understood. Nathaniel turned to Jamal. Operations. Tell me about the systems integration. Jamal's fingers flew across his keyboard, bringing up complex network diagrams. We're implementing new AI monitoring systems across all touchpoints. Check-in, boarding, customer service complaints resolution. The system will flag any statistical anomalies that might indicate bias. Will employees know they're being monitored? Robert asked. Yes, Nathaniel said firmly. Transparency is crucial. We're not trying to catch people doing wrong. We're trying to help them do right. The system will provide real-time feedback and coaching, not just surveillance. Some people are calling it dystopian, Leah said from her position by the door. The media's picked up on the AI monitoring angle. They're saying you're building Big Brother Airlines. Let them say it. I'd rather be accused of over-monitoring than under-protecting our passengers. Nathaniel rubbed his eyes. What about the Victim Compensation Fund? Marcus pulled up a financial document. We've allocated $50 million for direct compensation to verified victims of discrimination. So far, we've processed claims from 183 individuals with an average payout of $175,000 each. That's significantly higher than the settlements Regalis was hiding. Good. These people deserve more than hush money. They deserve acknowledgement and restitution. Nathaniel looked at Sarah on the screen. Any movement on the federal cases? Janet Carmichael's trial is set for October. David Preston is negotiating a plea deal. And Nathaniel, there's something else. The DOJ wants to interview you. The room went quiet. About what? Nathaniel asked, though he suspected he knew. The system outages. They want to understand the timeline, the technical details, whether there was any deliberate sabotage on your part. We documented everything, Jamal said quickly. Every flag was legitimate. Every system failure was based on real safety violations. I know that. You know that. But prosecutors are getting pressure from Regalis's legal team to investigate whether you weaponized your technology for personal revenge. Sarah's expression was serious. Nathaniel, they could theoretically charge you with computer fraud, economic sabotage, even domestic terrorism, if they wanted to stretch the statutes. That's insane, Marcus said. He exposed safety violations. He probably saved lives. I'm not saying they will charge him. I'm saying they could. And we need to be prepared. Sarah paused. Nathaniel, how do you want to handle this? He thought for a long moment. I'll cooperate fully. I'll sit for any interviews they want. I'll provide complete documentation. Because I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not afraid of the truth. What if they don't see it that way? Leah asked quietly. Then I'll deal with it. But I won't let fear of prosecution stop me from doing what's right. That's exactly what Regalis counted on for years, people being too scared to fight back. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, covering everything from new flight attendant training protocols to redesigned customer service scripts to the complete overhaul of the complaints process. By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight. Nathaniel walked to the windows overlooking the city. You know what keeps me up at night? He said to no one in particular. It's not the lawsuits or the federal investigations or the media attacks. It's the thought that we might fail. That we'll spend all this money and effort and time, and in 5 years, Cole Air will be just as bad as Regalis was. Elena joined him at the window. Culture changes hard, Nathaniel. It takes years, sometimes decades. You're going to have setbacks. People will resist. Some of your reforms won't work. You'll make mistakes. Encouraging pep talk. She smiled. I'm not finished. Yes, it's hard. But it's possible. I've seen companies transform. I've seen people who seemed irredeemable become champions of change. The difference is leadership. And you, Nathaniel Cole, are the kind of leader who can make this happen. He wanted to believe her. God, how he wanted to believe her. The next morning, Nathaniel did something he'd been dreading since the acquisition closed. He flew to Chicago on a Cole Air flight naturally to address the employees at the airline's headquarters. 5,000 people packed into the massive hangar at O'Hare International Airport. Flight attendants in their burgundy uniforms, pilots in their crisp whites, mechanics with grease-stained hands, customer service agents who'd been working the front lines. They watched him with a mixture of hope, skepticism, fear, and in some cases, open hostility. Nathaniel stood on a simple platform with no podium, no teleprompter, no script. Just him and a microphone, and 5,000 people whose futures depended on what he said next. My name is Nathaniel Cole, he began, and his voice carried across the hangar. And I own this airline now. I want to tell you why." He told them the story. Not a sanitized corporate version, but the truth. About standing at Gate 12 in Washington. About Sandra McKee's assumptions. About being treated like a criminal because of his skin color. About making the phone call that started everything. "Some of you worked with Sandra," he said. "Maybe you liked her. Maybe you thought she was a good person, and maybe she was in many ways. But she was also part of a system that dehumanized people. That made assumptions based on race. That protected itself at the expense of its customers." He let that sink in. "I'm not here to make you feel guilty. Most of you didn't create this system. You were just trying to do your jobs, feed your families, get through the day. But here's the thing, silence is complicity. And this airline depended on good people staying silent." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some people nodded. Others looked away. "So here's what's going to change. Starting today, this airline has zero tolerance for discrimination. Zero. I don't care if you've been here 30 years or 30 days. I don't care if you're a gate agent or a senior vice president. If you discriminate, you're gone." He paused, scanning the sea of faces. "But I'm not just here to threaten you. I'm here to support you. We're implementing new training. Real training, not the checkbox compliance garbage you've been doing. We're creating reporting systems where you can flag problems without fear of retaliation. We're building in accountability at every level, including mine." "What about our jobs?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Are you going to fire us all and replace us with new people?" "No," Nathaniel said firmly. "I'm not interested in mass layoffs, but I am interested in transformation. Some of you won't want to be part of that transformation, and you'll leave voluntarily. That's fine. We'll give you generous severance. But for those who stay, I need commitment. Not just following new rules because you're afraid of getting fired, but actual belief that every passenger deserves dignity and respect." A woman in a flight attendant uniform raised her hand. Nathaniel pointed to her. "Mr. Cole. I've worked for this airline for 19 years. I've seen things I'm not proud of. I've stayed silent when I shouldn't have. But I want to be part of the solution. What do you need from us?" Nathaniel felt something loosen in his chest. "Honesty, courage, and patience with the process. We're going to make mistakes as we figure this out. But if we commit to learning from those mistakes, if we hold each other accountable, if we remember that every passenger is someone's mother or son or sister or friend, then we can build something remarkable." Another hand went up. A pilot older with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who'd been flying for decades. "I'm not going to lie to you, Mr. Cole. A lot of us are skeptical. You're a tech billionaire who's never worked in aviation. You're implementing AI systems that feel invasive. You're changing procedures that have worked for years. Why should we trust you?" It was a fair question. "You shouldn't," Nathaniel said, and the honesty of it rippled through the crowd. "Not yet. Trust has to be earned. But I'll tell you what I can promise you, I will be transparent. I will listen. I will admit when I'm wrong. And I will never ever ask you to compromise your integrity or treat another human being as less than." He gestured around the hangar. "This airline has the potential to be the best in the world. You have incredible pilots, dedicated flight attendants, skilled mechanics, and passionate customer service agents. But that potential was poisoned by a culture that valued profit over people. We're going to flip that. We're going to prove that you can be profitable and ethical, that treating people with dignity isn't just the right thing to do, it's good business." The applause started slowly, uncertain, but it built. Not everyone clapped. Maybe a quarter of the room stood with arms crossed or hands in pockets, skepticism written across their faces. But enough people applauded to give Nathaniel hope. After the speech, he spent 4 hours walking the floor talking to employees one-on-one. A baggage handler who'd been written up for being too slow told him about his son's special needs and how the medical bills made it impossible to quit even when the job became unbearable. A gate agent confessed she'd been pressured to manage certain passengers and hated herself for it. A pilot talked about reporting safety violations only to be told to keep quiet or risk his career. Each story reinforced what Nathaniel already knew: the system was broken, but the people in it desperately wanted it fixed. The transformation of Regalis Airways into Cole Air happened in stages over the next 4 months. Each stage brought new challenges, new resistance, and occasionally surprising victories. The first major crisis came 6 weeks into the transition. A viral video showed a Cole Air gate agent in Dallas denying boarding to a young Latino man, claiming his documents were suspicious. The passenger, a U.S. citizen and decorated Marine veteran, recorded the entire encounter. Within hours, the video had 10 million views, and a new hashtag was trending, #NothingChanged. Nathaniel saw it while in a meeting with the rebranding team. His phone exploded with notifications. The press was already writing stories about how Cole Air was just Regalis with a new name. "Get me everything on that incident," he told Leah. "Employee record security footage, passenger manifest. I want to know exactly what happened." 2 hours later, he had the full picture. The gate agent Maria Gonzalez had been with the airline for 3 years. Her record was clean. But when investigators pulled the complete footage, they found something interesting. She'd been following a directive from her supervisor to verify documentation more carefully for certain passengers. The supervisor, it turned out, was one of the 327 employees Elena had identified as resistant to change. Nathaniel made a decision. He flew to Dallas that night. The next morning, he held a press conference at the airport. The Marine veteran Alex Rodriguez stood beside him. Yesterday, Alex Rodriguez was discriminated against by a Cole Air employee, Nathaniel said to the assembled reporters. "This is unacceptable. This is exactly what I promised would never happen again, and I was wrong." The reporters leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. "I was wrong," Nathaniel continued, "because I thought new policies and new training would be enough. But changing a culture requires more than that. It requires constant vigilance and immediate accountability. So, here's what's happening. The supervisor who directed Ms. Gonzalez to scrutinize certain passengers has been terminated. Ms. Gonzalez herself has been suspended pending investigation. And Alex Rodriguez has my personal apology and a commitment that we will do better." He turned to Alex. "I'm sorry. You served your country with honor, and you deserve to be treated with respect. We failed you. I failed you." Alex, who'd been justifiably angry in the viral video, seemed taken aback by the directness of the apology. "Mr. Cole, I appreciate that," Alex said. "But I want to know, is this real? Or is this just damage control?" "It's real. And to prove it, I'm asking you to hold us accountable. I'm offering you a position as a paid consultant on our Diversity and Inclusion Council. Help us understand where we're falling short. Challenge us when we're wrong. Be the voice for passengers who don't have the platform you have." Alex studied him for a long moment. "You're serious. You're..." "Completely." "Then I accept. But Mr. Cole, I'm not going to go easy on you." "I don't want you to." The press conference changed the narrative. Instead of just another corporate apology tour, it became a story about real accountability and genuine attempts at change. Alex Rodriguez became a powerful advocate for Cole Air's transformation, his credibility as a veteran and a victim lending weight to the reforms. But not everyone was convinced. 3 weeks later, a group of former Regalis executives filed a shareholder lawsuit claiming Nathaniel had deliberately tanked the company's value to facilitate a below-market acquisition. The lawsuit alleged conspiracy fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. "They're desperate," Sarah said, reviewing the complaint in Nathaniel's office. "This is a Hail Mary attempt to extract a settlement." "How much are they asking for?" $200 million. Marcus whistled. "That's aggressive." "It's also baseless," Sarah continued. "We have documentation showing the stock price decline was driven by legitimate revelations of fraud and discrimination. But Nathaniel, this is going to be expensive to fight." And it's going to keep you tied up in depositions and court appearances for months. Then we fight it. I'm not paying extortion money to executives who enabled discrimination. The lawsuit became a media circus. Depositions were leaked. Private emails were made public. Nathaniel's entire business history was scrutinized, looking for anything that could paint him as vindictive or reckless. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. But the process was exhausting. Nathaniel spent entire days answering questions from hostile lawyers. His personal life was dissected. His motivations questioned. His race weaponized by people who claimed he was playing the victim while wielding immense power. Through it all, the transformation of Cole Air continued. New uniforms were designed professional, but comfortable with input from employees. Aircraft interiors were updated with an emphasis on accessibility and comfort for all passengers, not just premium cabins. Customer service scripts were rewritten to emphasize empathy over efficiency. And slowly, measurably, things began to change. Passenger satisfaction scores started climbing. Discrimination complaints dropped by 67% in the first quarter after the acquisition. Employee retention improved. Even the financial metrics which Marcus had warned might suffer during the transition remained stable. 6 months after the acquisition, Nathaniel received an unexpected visitor. Sandra McKee, looking older but calmer than when he'd last seen her, appeared at his office with a request. "I want to help," she said simply. Nathaniel studied her. "Help how?" "Training. I want to be part of the diversity and inclusion training. I want to tell employees what I did, how I justified it to myself, how the system encouraged it. I want them to see what discrimination looks like from the inside, so they can recognize it in themselves." "Why?" Nathaniel asked. "Because I've spent 6 months in therapy, Mr. Cole, working through my own biases, my own prejudices, understanding where they came from, my upbringing, my fears, the corporate culture that rewarded them. I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can prevent others from making the same mistakes. You understand that some people will hate you for it, that putting yourself out there as the face of what was wrong will make you a target. I'm already a target. At least this way, maybe something good comes from it." Nathaniel made a decision that surprised even himself. "All right. But you work with Dr. Morrison. She designs the program, she approves everything you say, and if at any point you're causing more harm than good, you're done." "Thank you, Mr. Cole." "Don't thank me yet. This is going to be harder than you think." Sandra McKee's involvement in training proved controversial but effective. Some employees walked out when she started speaking. Others listened with skepticism. But a surprising number found her testimony powerful. Here was someone who'd been at the center of the old culture, who'd benefited from it, now explaining exactly how it corrupted good people. "I told myself I was just doing my job," Sandra said in one training session that Nathaniel observed. "I told myself that if someone looked suspicious, it wasn't racism to question them. But the truth was, I had different definitions of suspicious for different races. A white man in casual clothes, probably a tech executive. A black man in the same clothes, probably couldn't afford the ticket. That's racism, even if I didn't use slurs or burn crosses." The room was silent, uncomfortable, but engaged. And when passengers complained, I told myself they were being too sensitive, playing the race card. But now I understand they weren't too sensitive. I was too comfortable with my own prejudice. After the session, a young black gate agent approached Sandra. "My supervisor keeps telling me I'm too aggressive when I stand up for passengers, that I'm making things difficult. I've been thinking about quitting." Sandra looked at her for a long moment. "Don't quit. Challenge them. Document everything. Be the person I should have been. And if they retaliate, you have an entire legal team and a CEO who will back you up." The young woman looked at Nathaniel, who'd been standing nearby. He nodded. "She's right. We've got your back." By month 8, the federal investigations concluded. Janet Carmichael was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for conspiracy and securities fraud. David Preston accepted a plea deal, 2 years probation, and a permanent ban from working in aviation. Charles Whitmore was never charged criminally, but his reputation was destroyed, and his severance package had been cut to a fraction of what he'd hoped for. The shareholder lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. The judge ruled that Nathaniel had acted properly, that the decline in Regalis's value was due to the company's own misconduct, and that the former executives were attempting to escape accountability through litigation. And through it all, Cole Air kept flying, kept improving, kept proving that an airline could be both successful and ethical. One evening, as Nathaniel reviewed quarterly reports showing Cole Air's first profitable quarter under his ownership, Jamal knocked on his office door. "Got a minute?" the young analyst asked. "Always. What's up?" "I've been running projections. If current trends continue, Cole Air will be the highest-rated airline for customer satisfaction within 2 years. We're already number 3 up from 27th under Regalis." Nathaniel allowed himself a small smile. "That's because we're actually treating people like human beings. Radical concept." "It's more than that, though. The employees are bought in. They believe in what we're doing. I've been monitoring internal communications, and the sentiment has shifted. People are proud to work for Cole Air now." "That's good to hear." Jamal hesitated. "There's something else. The rebranding launch. The board wants to do a big public event. Invite press dignitaries, maybe even the president. Show the world that Cole Air isn't just Regalis repackaged." "What do you think?" "I think you should do it at Washington National, Gate 12, where it all started." Nathaniel looked out at the city lights, thinking about the journey from humiliation to transformation. About all the people who'd been hurt by the old system, and all the people working to build a new one. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That feels right." The planning for the Cole Air launch event consumed the next 6 weeks. Every detail mattered. Every symbol carried weight. This wasn't just a corporate rebranding, it was a statement about who they were and what they stood for. Elena Morrison insisted on involving employees at every level. Gate agents helped design the new boarding procedures. Flight attendants consulted on uniform modifications. Pilots weighed in on safety protocols. Even the baggage handlers got input on operational efficiency improvements. "This has to be their victory too," Elena told Nathaniel during one particularly exhausting planning session. "Not just yours. They did the hard work of changing." "Some of them," Marcus added, looking up from his spreadsheet. "We lost about 800 employees in the transition, people who couldn't or wouldn't adapt. And we hired 900 new ones," Nathaniel countered. "People who believe in what we're building. Plus, most of the original employees who stayed are genuinely committed now. The numbers show it." Sarah appeared on the video screen, calling in from yet another regulatory meeting. "Speaking of numbers, the FAA has completed their assessment. Cole Air has been granted full operational certification. We're officially a new airline." The room erupted in applause. It had taken 10 months, countless inspections, and enough paperwork to fill a warehouse, but they'd done it. Cole Air was real. "When do we announce the launch date?" Leah asked. Nathaniel checked his calendar. December 15th, exactly 1 year to the day after the incident at Gate 12. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. As the launch date approached, media interest intensified. Everyone wanted to know if Cole Air would succeed or become a cautionary tale about activist billionaires trying to run industries they didn't understand. Financial analysts were split. Some praised Nathaniel's vision. Others predicted bankruptcy within 3 years. But the most meaningful responses came from passengers. A woman named Jennifer Chen wrote an open letter that went viral. She described flying Regalis 5 years earlier while pregnant, being forced to give up her paid first-class seat to accommodate a more valued customer, then being ignored when she complained. Now she'd booked a Cole Air flight for her daughter's 5th birthday trip. "I want my daughter to grow up in a world where airlines treat people with dignity," Jennifer wrote. "Where a person's worth isn't determined by the color of their skin or the size of their bank account. Mr. Cole isn't just changing an airline. He's changing what we believe is possible. The letter brought tears to Nathaniel's eyes when he read it. This was why he'd done all of this, not for revenge, not for profit, for the possibility that the world could be better. 3 days before the launch, Nathaniel received an unexpected call from the White House. The president wanted to attend the event. "Are you serious?" Nathaniel asked his scheduler, certain there'd been a mistake. "Completely serious, sir. The president sees this as an opportunity to highlight corporate responsibility and civil rights progress. It's a powerful message." Nathaniel thought about it. The president's presence would bring massive attention, but it would also politicize the event. Some people would support Cole Air just because the president endorsed it. Others would boycott for the same reason. "Tell them thank you, but no," Nathaniel said finally. "This isn't about politics. It's about people. I don't want anyone's support or opposition based on which party they vote for. I want them to judge us on how we treat passengers." His team looked shocked. "You're turning down the president," Marcus said. "Do you know what that endorsement would do for our stock price?" "I don't care about the stock price. I care about doing this right." Sarah smiled from the screen. "You know what? That's exactly the right call. This has to be authentic, not political theater." The night before the launch, Nathaniel couldn't sleep. He stood in his apartment overlooking the Potomac, thinking about the journey. From that moment at Gate 12, humiliated, angry, but determined to this moment, on the eve of launching an airline built on principles rather than profits. His phone buzzed. A text from Victor Grant, the security guard who'd shown doubt that first day, "Tomorrow's going to be incredible. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like." Then one from Jamal, "Got the presentation loaded and ready. This is going to change everything, sir. I can feel it." And surprisingly, one from Sandra McKee, "I don't deserve to be part of tomorrow. But I want you to know I'm proud of what you've built. You turned my worst moment into something beautiful." Nathaniel didn't respond to Sandra, but he thought about her words. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a better future despite it. December 15th dawned cold and clear. Washington National Airport was transformed. The entire terminal had been decorated with Cole Air's new branding, deep blue and silver, with a logo that incorporated an eagle and a compass, symbolizing both freedom and direction. But the real transformation was at Gate 12. Where Nathaniel had once been humiliated, now stood a stage. Where he'd been profiled and threatened with arrest, now gathered hundreds of people, employees in crisp new uniforms. Passengers who'd been victims of discrimination, reporters from every major outlet, and community leaders who'd fought for civil rights for decades. Nathaniel arrived 2 hours early, wanting to walk the space alone before the crowds arrived. He stood at the exact spot where Sandra McKee had questioned his ticket, where Brennan had tried to intimidate him, where his life had changed forever. "Powerful, isn't it?" a voice said behind him. He turned to find Representative John Lewis. No, wait, he'd passed away years ago. It was Representative Karen Wilson who'd taken up his civil rights legacy. She walked with a cane, her face lined with the battles she'd fought, but her eyes were fierce. "Representative Wilson," Nathaniel said, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming. Wouldn't miss it. When I heard what you were doing, I had to see it for myself." She stood beside him, looking at the gate. "You know what John Lewis used to say? Get in good trouble, necessary trouble. That's what you did, son. You got in the best kind of trouble. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if I used a sledgehammer when a scalpel would have worked." She studied him. "Let me ask you something. How many people did Regalis Airways discriminate against before you? We documented at least 400 cases. And how many would they have discriminated against after you if you'd just accepted an apology and moved on?" Nathaniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. "You didn't go too far," Representative Wilson said. "You went exactly as far as justice required. Now you've got to make sure this actually works, that Cole Air becomes what you promised it would be. And if it doesn't, then you keep trying. That's all any of us can do. By 9 a.m., the terminal was packed. Nathaniel stood backstage, watching through a gap in the curtain as people filed in. He spotted Jamal looking sharp in a new suit, his intern badge long since replaced with an executive title. Robert Chen sat with his family vindication written across his face. Alex Rodriguez, the Marine veteran, wore his dress uniform and sat in the front row. And there in the back, trying to be inconspicuous, was Victor Grant. The young security guard had requested a transfer to Cole Air's security division, wanting to be part of the change rather than just witnessing it. Elena Morrison appeared at Nathaniel's elbow. Nervous. Terrified. Good. That means you care. She handed him a note card. Your speech. Though knowing you, you'll ignore it and speak from the heart anyway. He smiled. You know me well. The lights dimmed. A video began playing on massive screens, the story of what had happened told through the eyes of the victims. Marcus Thompson describing being accused of theft. Aisha Patel talking about being stopped repeatedly. James Park explaining how his military service hadn't protected him from discrimination. And then Nathaniel's story shown through the viral video footage. The crowd watching live fell silent as they saw Sandra McKee profile him, saw Brennan's aggression, saw the complicit silence of witnesses. But the video didn't end there. It showed what came next. The investigations, the revelations, the accountability, the transformation. Employees talking about how the culture had changed. Passengers describing their first flights on Cole Air, where they'd been treated with genuine respect. When the video ended, Nathaniel walked onto the stage. The applause was thunderous, but he held up a hand for silence. A year ago, I stood right here. He began, his voice carrying across the terminal. I was a passenger trying to board a flight I'd legally purchased, and I was treated like a criminal because a gate agent looked at me and decided I didn't belong in first class. He paused, letting that sink in. I could have accepted an apology, could have taken a settlement, could have moved on and pretended it never happened. That's what the system counted on. That's what Regalis Airways built their business model around: discriminate, deny, settle, quietly repeat. He walked to the edge of the stage, looking directly at the audience. But I had something most victims of discrimination don't have. I had resources, power, a platform. And I realized that staying silent wasn't just letting them get away with it, it was betraying everyone who'd been victimized before me, and everyone who would be victimized after. So I made a choice. I decided to fight. Not just for me, but for every person who's ever been profiled, humiliated, or treated as less than human because of how they look. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. People said I was overreacting, that I was being vindictive, that I was using my power irresponsibly. Maybe they were right about the power part. But here's what I believe: if you have power and you don't use it to protect people who are vulnerable, then what's the point of having it? So we bought this airline, and we tore it down to its foundation. And we rebuilt it based on a radical idea that every passenger, regardless of race or income or background, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. He gestured to the crowd. The real heroes of this story aren't me. It's people like Jamal Rivers, who spoke up when speaking up could have cost him his career. Like Victor Grant, who showed doubt when doubt was dangerous. Like Robert Chen, who tried to sound the alarm years before anyone listened. Like Alex Rodriguez, who could have just posted his viral video and walked away, but instead chose to help us do better. Each person he named stood as the crowd applauded, their faces a mixture of pride and humility. And yes, even like Sandra McKee, who did something terrible, then had the courage to face what she'd done and help prevent others from making the same mistakes. Sandra wasn't in the audience, but Nathaniel saw several people look around, surprised that he'd included her in the story of redemption. Cole Air isn't perfect, Nathaniel continued. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have incidents where we fall short of our ideals. But here's what I promise you: when we mess up, we'll own it. We'll fix it. And we'll be transparent about the process. Because accountability isn't a one-time thing. It's a daily commitment. He pulled out a small remote and clicked it. Behind him, the screens lit up with Cole Air's new mission statement written in partnership with employees, passengers, and civil rights advocates. To provide excellent service to every passenger, recognizing that diversity is our strength, dignity is our standard, and justice is our compass. Today we're launching more than an airline, Nathaniel said. We're launching a movement, a proof of concept that companies can be both profitable and ethical, that treating people right isn't just morally correct, it's good business. That diversity isn't a buzzword or a quota, it's a source of innovation and excellence. He smiled, and it reached his eyes. In about an hour, Cole Air Flight 1, because we're restarting the numbering system, making this a true new beginning, will take off from this airport. It's headed to San Francisco, the same route I was trying to fly a year ago. And you know what? The first-class section is full of people who earned their seats. No assumptions, no profiling, no discrimination. The applause built again, but Nathaniel wasn't finished. I want to invite everyone who's ever been discriminated against by an airline, any airline, to fly with us. Not because we're perfect, but because we're committed. And I want to invite everyone who works in aviation to watch what we're doing and demand better from their own companies. Because change doesn't happen in isolation, it spreads. He looked directly at the cameras, knowing this was being broadcast live. To every young person watching this, especially young people of color, who've been told you don't belong, who've been made to feel less than who've been discriminated against, you matter. Your dignity matters. And when someone tries to take that from you, you have the right to fight back. Maybe you don't have $1 billion company to do it with, but you have your voice, your truth, and your power. Use them. The crowd rose to their feet, the applause deafening. Nathaniel stepped back, and Jamal walked onto the stage, pulling up operational data on the screens. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jamal said, his voice steady despite his youth, "I want to show you what change looks like in numbers. In the 10 months since Cole Air began operations, we've had 0 validated discrimination complaints. 0. Our customer satisfaction scores are 94%, the highest in the industry. Our employee retention is 96%. And our profitability is tracking ahead of projections." He clicked through slides showing the transformation in concrete terms. Training completion rates, diversity hiring statistics, accessibility improvements, community investment programs. "This isn't just feel-good marketing," Jamal continued. "This is proof that doing the right thing and doing good business aren't mutually exclusive. They're the same thing." After the formal presentation, Nathaniel spent 2 hours talking to passengers, employees, and reporters. Each conversation reinforced why this mattered. An elderly black woman grabbed his hand with tears in her eyes. "I flew for the first time in 1963, right after integration. Spent 60 years being treated like I didn't belong on planes. Thank you for this. Thank you." A young pilot approached him, Latino and proud. "My whole career I've had to be twice as good to get half the respect. Cole Air is the first place I've worked where I'm just judged on my flying." A mother with 2 children, all of them wearing hijabs, hugged him. "My daughters were afraid to fly after the way we were treated on other airlines. Today they're excited. You gave them back their sense of safety." Each story was a reminder that this wasn't abstract. This was real people's lives being changed. At exactly 11 a.m., Nathaniel walked to Gate 12. No longer just a gate, but a symbol. The first Cole Air flight was ready for boarding. The aircraft, a brand new 787 with Cole Air's distinctive blue and silver livery, gleamed in the winter sun. Representative Wilson was among the first-class passengers, along with Robert Chen, Alex Rodriguez, and 20 other people who'd been victims of airline discrimination. They were flying for free, with dignity, treated exactly as they should have been treated all along. "Mr. Cole," the gate agent said, a young woman named Michelle Torres, who'd been carefully selected for this moment, "your boarding pass." Nathaniel handed it over. Michelle scanned it without hesitation, without doubt, without profiling. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Cole. Seat 1A. Have an excellent flight." Simple words, but they meant everything. As Nathaniel walked down the jet bridge, he felt the weight of the past year lift slightly. Not completely, it would never completely go away, but enough to breathe easier. The aircraft interior was stunning. They'd redesigned everything with input from passengers with disabilities, parents with young children, and people of all body types. The seats were comfortable without being exclusive. The entertainment system included content in 15 languages. The bathroom had been redesigned for accessibility. Nathaniel took his seat, looking around at the other passengers. Every face told a story. Every person represented a small victory against systems that had tried to diminish them. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Sarah Williams. On behalf of the entire Cole Air family, welcome aboard Flight 1 to San Francisco. This isn't just a flight, it's a statement about the kind of world we want to live in, where everyone belongs, where everyone matters, where everyone is treated with the respect they deserve." As the plane pushed back from the gate, Nathaniel looked out the window at Washington National Airport, at Gate 12, where his humiliation had sparked a revolution. At the terminal, where thousands of people had gathered to witness the launch of something new. His phone buzzed with a text from Leah. "You did it. You actually did it. I'm proud to work for you." Then, one from Marcus stock price just jumped 23% on the launch news. "Told you, ethics and profit could coexist." And one from Elena. "This is just the beginning. The real work of sustaining this culture starts now. But if anyone can do it, it's you." She was right. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Cole Air would face challenges. There would be setbacks. Some employees would slip back into old patterns. Some passengers would test the new systems. Competitors would try to undermine them. But Nathaniel was ready for it. Because he'd learned something crucial over the past year, change was possible. Not easy, not quick, not guaranteed, but possible. The plane lifted off, climbing into the clear December sky. Below Washington, D.C., spread out like a map of power and possibility. Nathaniel thought about all the battles that had been fought in that city for civil rights, for justice, for dignity. His battle was smaller, more specific, just one airline, one industry. But it was part of that larger struggle. As they reached cruising altitude, the flight attendant approached with a warm smile. "Mr. Cole, can I get you anything?" "Just water, thanks." She returned with a glass and a note card. "This is from the crew. We wanted you to have it." Nathaniel opened the card. Inside, signed by every flight attendant, pilot, and crew member on the plane. "Thank you for believing that people are worth more than profits. Thank you for fighting when it would have been easier to walk away. Thank you for proving that one person standing up for what's right can change the world. We're honored to be part of Cole Air. We're honored to work for you." Nathaniel felt his eyes burn with unexpected tears. He'd spent so much of the past year focused on systems, policies, and procedures. But this reminded him that at its core, this was about people, about treating each other with basic human decency, about building a world where no one had to experience what he'd experienced at Gate 12. He looked around the cabin at the other passengers. Some were working on laptops. Some were reading. A child was playing with a tablet. An elderly couple held hands. All of them trusting that this flight would be safe, comfortable, and respectful. That trust was sacred, and maintaining it would require eternal vigilance. But as the plane flew west toward San Francisco, Nathaniel allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They'd done something remarkable. They'd taken a broken system and rebuilt it into something better. They'd proven that accountability and reform weren't just possible, they were profitable. And most importantly, they'd sent a message to every corporation, every industry, every system that discriminated: there are consequences. People are watching. And sometimes the person you underestimate might just be the one who brings your whole empire down and rebuilds it the right way. True power, Nathaniel thought, wasn't destroying what was broken. It was having the courage to rebuild it better, to face resistance, criticism, and doubt, and keep pushing forward anyway. To use privilege and resources not for personal gain, but to lift others up. As the flight continued, passengers began to notice something unusual. The crew wasn't just professional, they were genuinely happy. The service wasn't just efficient, it was warm. The entire experience felt different from any other airline, and passengers started talking about it, posting about it, sharing their experience in real time. By the time Flight 1 landed in San Francisco 5 hours later, Cole Air launch was trending worldwide. But more importantly, 187 passengers had experienced an airline that actually lived up to its promises. Nathaniel was the last to deplane. He stood at the aircraft door, with Captain Williams looking back at the empty cabin. "How'd it feel?" he asked. Sarah Williams, a black woman who'd spent 20 years fighting her way up through aviation's ranks, smiled. "Like everything I've been working toward my entire career. Thank you, Mr. Cole, for making this possible. Thank you for being part of it." As Nathaniel walked through the San Francisco terminal, his phone exploded with notifications. Messages from around the world. People sharing their own stories of discrimination. People praising Cole Air. People demanding their own companies do better. The movement was spreading just like he'd hoped. That evening, back in his hotel room, Nathaniel video called his team back in D.C. They'd been monitoring the launch all day, and their faces showed exhaustion and exhilaration in equal measure. "We did it," Jamal said simply. "Cole Air is real, and people love it." "Day one," Nathaniel reminded him. "We've got a long way to go." "But what a day one," Marcus said, grinning. "Bookings are up 340% over projections. We're going to have to add flights." "Then add them, but carefully. Growth doesn't matter if we lose our soul in the process." They talked for another hour about next steps, challenges ahead, and opportunities they hadn't anticipated. When the call ended, Nathaniel sat alone with his thoughts. His journey from humiliated passenger to airline owner had taken exactly 1 year. In that time, he'd brought down a corrupt corporation, bought it, and rebuilt it into something revolutionary. He'd faced lawsuits, federal investigations, death threats, and public criticism. And he'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because some things were worth fighting for. Dignity, justice. The radical idea that every person deserved respect, regardless of race, income, or background. As he fell asleep that night, Nathaniel thought about the young intern who'd spoken up at Gate 12. About the security guard who'd shown doubt. About the whistleblower who'd been fired for telling the truth. About the victims who'd found their voices. They were the real heroes. He'd just had the resources to amplify their courage. And tomorrow, Cole Air would fly again. And the day after. And the day after that. Each flight a small act of resistance against discrimination. Each passenger treated with dignity, a tiny revolution. The work would never be finished. Culture change was eternal, requiring constant vigilance and renewed commitment. But tonight, just for tonight, Nathaniel allowed himself to feel satisfied. They'd proven it was possible. To stand up, to fight back, to demand better, and to build something beautiful from the ashes of injustice. One phone call, 2 words. Protocol Raven. That's all it had taken to start a revolution. And as Cole Air's fleet grew, as their routes expanded, as their commitment to equality deepened, that revolution would continue. Not because one billionaire demanded it, but because thousands of employees, millions of passengers, and a society tired of discrimination decided enough was enough. The future belonged to companies that valued people over profits, dignity over discrimination, justice over expediency. And Cole Air was leading the way.